project today, we're going to be working on a really fun lace stitch. It's a circle leaf stitch. And I'm going to be using this beautiful yarn on camera today. I picked it up in Lisbon when I was traveling, but you can also get this on Jimmy Bean wool. It's the Malabrigo in the DK sport weight with lots of different colors to choose from. I love these stunning colorways. I've always been a fan of this yarn. It's so squishy. This is a great splurge project for yourself if you want to make it in something absolutely gorgeous and stunning when it comes to yarn. Sometimes when I'm in a yarn shop, I want to buy that gorgeous yarn, but then I think, what do I make with it? So I'm giving you an idea of what to make with it. But also, if you want to go with a cotton weight, I have the Comfy Cotton Sport weight shown in this white as well, so you can see what that looks like. No matter what yarn you use, be sure to check your gauge so that it sizes appropriately and fits you the way that you want it to fit you. We will need 2 crochet hooks today, one to 3.5 millimeter. This will be for the ribbing only. And then I've got the 4 millimeter for the body of this garment. You will want a tape measure. I think whenever you're doing garments, it's always a good idea to have a tape measure around to measure your body, measure what you've done, make sure that we are on track. Also, a yarn needle. We need yarn needles to weave in those ends, scissors to fasten them off. And then, of course, our trusty stitch marker. We always want a stitch marker, especially when working with garments. Grab a few. For this one, there will be one section that we're going to go ahead and split for the sleeves and the body, and you'll want 4 stitch markers for that to make sure that we're doing that in the correct way, easy, without any stress. So we're going to go ahead and get started with this. This is a top-down garment. We're going to start with that ribbing. It's all in one piece, super simple when it comes to the construction of it, and really quick to work up. So let's get started. Now we're going to be using the 3.5 millimeter for this ribbing, and this ribbing will be worked in rows, and it will be the same amount of rows for every single size. So we're going to go ahead and make a slip knot and place that onto our hook, and then we are going to chain 6. And now we're going to be working in the second chain from the hook and across. So that will be 5 stitches for the row. This last chain that we just did, the 6th chain, is our turning chain. And then I'm going to work on the bottom side with these humps. I like to work my first row in the bottom humps. I just find it looks nice to do so. So for row 1, we're just going to single crochet into each stitch across, which will be 5 stitches. And now that we have our 5 stitches, we're going to turn our work. And now row 2 will be our repeat for all of the ribbing rows. So I'm going to chain 1, and then working in the back loop only, we are going to single crochet 5. And that's going to be our repeat. Row 2 is our repeat for every single row until we build the amount of rows we need for this ribbing, this neck ribbing. So we'll turn our work, chain 1, and you can tighten down that turning chain. You can actually omit it. I just want you to know you don't have to do a turning chain if you don't want to. It still turns out great. And in the back loop only, we will single crochet across for 5. Now we're going to be repeating row 2 until we have a total of 144 rows, and then we will come on back. Now this is a little bit of a wider neck. I like that wider neck for summer. It's really pretty to work up. Now after working the 144 rows for this ribbing, we're going to join our current row with the very first row. So you can simply fold this in, fold them together, and now we're going to be joining these by slip stitching those edges together. Just make sure that your ribbing isn't twisted in here. We don't want anything to be twisting along that ribbing. Now I'm going to chain 1 and tighten that down, and we're going to go through the back loop only of our current row, and then the back loop only of our very first row, yarn over and slip stitch those together. We'll work those for all 5 stitches across. Now, after slip stitching those together, we're going to be working along one edge, and you can decide if you want this to be your outside where the seam is, or you can flip it and have this be the outside. I prefer this to be the outside, so I just simply turn my work. It doesn't make that big of a difference, but I just like to have that be on the inside. So I'll rotate my work here, and now I'm going to work along this edge here. Now for working along this edge, I like to change to my 4mm hook, and we'll be using that for the rest of this pattern. That way our stitches don't end up too tight around the edge of this, but it won't make too big of a difference if you want to work it in the 3.5 hook. I just like to give myself some breathing space here. So I'm going to chain one to start this, and we're going to be working one stitch per row edge all the way along here. And I'm going to do it in kind of a unique way. If you don't want to do it how I'm doing it, you can slip stitch all the way around and then single crochet in the back loop only all the way around and do it in 2 rounds. But this is how we do a 1 round pass with this like amazing clean edge look. We're going to go inserting our hook into the very first row along this edge, and we're going to do a single crochet. Now, if you need to, mark the first stitch of this round. Markers are always a great idea because it just makes crafting much easier. You don't have to think as much or get confused. Now, to work along the next edge, we're going to insert our hook into that left bar of the single crochet we just made, and then we're going to go right into the edge of the fabric here. Yarn over and pull up a loop through the fabric and through that first loop on the hook. Then yarn over and pull through 2. This creates a really nice looking edge. I'm going to do a couple more here. So through the left bar into the fabric, yarn over and pull that loop up and through the first loop on the hook, and then yarn over and pull through the remaining 2 to complete the stitch. So through the left bar, along the edge of the fabric, pulling up that loop, pulling through the first loop on the hook, yarning over and pulling through 2. And this, I just love the look of it. It creates such a nice clean edge, and also sets us up for amazing stitches to work into when we come back. So see how this is working out? We have this nice crisp line here that will stay. It really makes the edge of that fabric, I mean, you can tell compared to this edge, nice and clean. And then we have these single crochet stitches already set up for us to work into on the next round. So I'm going to complete this all the way around. So we will have a total of 144 stitches here because we have 144 rows. Now that we worked all the way around, we have this beautiful, gorgeous edge here, and we're ready to start working on building out that yoke. We're going to be using a very fun circle leaf stitch. We're going to walk through each step of this so that you understand how it's done. It actually ends up being quite simple once you get going. So here is how the circle leaf stitch is going to go. So we've ended our edging, and we're going to move our stitch marker and slip stitch to that stitch to join. Now we're going to chain 1 and single crochet in the first. So the same stitch that we joined to. Go ahead and throw in that stitch marker. We always want to keep track of our rounds and make this as easy as possible. Next, we're going to do a stacked cluster. I'm labeling it this way because I think it's the easiest way to understand it. So here's how a stacked cluster is going to go. We're going to do a little bit of a modified cluster, not a full cluster that has a lot of yarn overs, and then we're going to do another one right on top of it. So we're going to chain 3 and then yarn over and go into the 3rd chain from the hook. Then yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2. We're going to do that again. So yarn over, back into that same 3rd chain from the hook, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2, and now we have 3 loops on our hook, and we're going to yarn over and pull through all 3. Now I will note I like to hold the base of these clusters as I make them so that this hole doesn't get very large. It will look good in the end, but if you hold the base, that helps. Now we're going to do those steps again. So we're going to stack this. We're going to chain 3, yarn over and go into that 3rd chain from the hook, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2. Then we'll do that again. And now we have 3 loops on our hook. We will yarn over and pull through all 3. And that completes our stacked clusters. Those look really nice. We just stacked one on top of the other. It's quite simple to do. And this is one stacked cluster. Now we're going to work along this edge for this very first row. We're going to count 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and skip them, and then single crochet into the next. And now we're just going to be repeating this all the way around. So we'll do a stacked cluster. And then we'll skip the next 5. And then we single crochet, do a stacked cluster, skip the next 5. So that is our repeat all the way around for this round 1. It will get us going with those stacked clusters. And this is the same for every single size. When we start increasing, we'll increase differently per size. But right now, all the instructions are the same for each size. So working those stacked clusters all the way around for round 1 will get us used to working these stitches. And then for round 2, we're already going to go into increasing for this yoke, and we will cover that. So round 1, we are working into these stitches along the edge. When we start working this stitch later on, we'll be working into these spaces and working around between those stacked clusters. But for now, let's do round 1 and come on back. Now at the end of round 1, we are going to remove our stitch marker and slip stitch to join in that first single crochet stitch. And now we're ready to begin round 2. Now there's a couple things we're going to learn here in round 2. One is how to start each round, and that will require us moving our starting point. And then also we will be increasing already. So you only had one round to get used to this circle leaf stitch, but now we're going to learn to increase that circle leaf stitch. We're going to be increasing evenly around, so we're making the yoke here for round 2. So to start each round in this stitch pattern without turning, we're going to work in one direction here. We need to get to the center of the stacked cluster stitch here. So we've got this stacked cluster, and we're going to be working a single crochet stitch right around the center of that stacked cluster. But to get there, we'll need to move our yarn. So we can slip stitch up the side here in the back loops if we want, or my preferred method, just because I love hiding any type of join, I'm going to loosely, you don't want to make these too tight, slip stitch along the back of that stacked cluster. And when it blocks out, it'll block pretty flat, pretty nicely. And it just hides us moving that yarn up that stitch. And then we're going to single crochet in that center area around that stacked cluster. So now we've done our first stitch of round 2. That's a single crochet stitch. We have placed it in the right place to work this round. And now we're ready to go. So we have done our first single crochet stitch, and now we're going to work a stacked cluster. But our placement of our next stitch is what's going to help us do this increase. Now, after working that stacked cluster, to repeat this stitch without increasing, we would be working a single crochet stitch around the center of the next stacked cluster stitch. But because we want to increase, we're going to need to make more of these in this round. So we're going to be working our single crochet stitch right into the single crochet stitch of the round below. So we're just creating an increase here by squishing that together a bit. Now we're going to do another stacked cluster.
And now after making the second stacked cluster, we are going to work in between the stacked cluster from the round below. So we work around that area into that space, working a single crochet stitch. And what this has done is in the space we normally would have worked one stacked cluster, we've now worked two to do an increase. And in the next round, I'll show you how to just simply work across with around without increasing. So we're doing an increase round here, but on the next one we won't be. And now we're going to work two more stacked cluster stitches and single crochet stitches, but these ones are going to be done without increasing. Here's our first one, and we're going to do this again. We're going to go around the center here and single crochet, and then we're going to do another stacked cluster. And this segment right here is not increasing. So here's been our repeat so far, and this is what we're going to repeat around for this round. We've done a single crochet in the center of a stacked cluster, then a stacked cluster and a single crochet and a single crochet, then a stacked cluster and a single crochet into that next stacked cluster space. And then we've done a stacked cluster, single crochet in the next stacked cluster space, and a stacked cluster. This is our repeat around. So for this next part, we're going to repeat that again. We are going to do a single crochet, a stacked cluster, and then we're going to single crochet into the next single crochet stitch so that we can do an increase here. We're building in those increases. Now we're working another stacked cluster. And then we're going to single crochet into the very next center space between the previous stacked cluster stitches. And then we're going to do another stacked cluster. And then single crochet into that next space in the center of that next space and another stacked cluster. And that is going to be our repeat around. So I'm just going to show you this again. So we've done it from here to here, and now we've done it from here to here. But we're going to talk about it one more time, just because it is an increase and we're just getting acquainted with the stitch. And we're already starting with increases. I want to run through this one more time. So the repeat around that we're going to be doing is working a single crochet in the center of the stack cluster from the round below, working a stack cluster, single crocheting in the single crochet stitch, working a stacked cluster, single crocheting in the center of the stack cluster from the round below, and then we're going to do a stacked cluster, single crochet in the center stitch from round below, and stacked cluster. That right there is our repeat. We're going to repeat that all the way around. Now at the end of round 2, this means we will have increased. So on round 1, we had 24 clusters and 24 single crochet stitches. For round 2, we will end with 32 stacked clusters and 32 single crochet stitches. Now that we are at the end of round 2, we're going to go ahead and move that stitch marker and slip stitch to join in that first single crochet of the round. And now we're ready for round 3, and round 3 will be no increasing. We're just going to work in that stitch pattern, but I'm going to walk you through it. We'll be doing several rounds in between the rounds that we increase this way. So I'm going to slip stitch until I get to the center of the next stacked cluster. So just like we did on the round below, I'm just trying to catch some yarn on the back here. Slip stitch to the center, and then go ahead and single crochet around that center. You can chain one if you want. I don't really find that it's necessary. I don't like to add any extra bulk if I don't have to. And we're going to go ahead and mark that stitch. And then we're going to go right into our stitch pattern repeat, which is to do a stacked single crochet, stacked cluster. And now that we've done our stacked cluster, we will simply go to the next. So this is where we increase from the round below. We're going to go right to that next stacked cluster and single crochet in that center space around the center of the previous stacked cluster. And then we'll stack cluster again. And that's going to be our repeat all the way around. So we have the same stitch count. We're not increasing. We're just doing those stacked clusters and then single crocheting between the center of that stacked cluster from the round below. And we will repeat that all the way around for round 3. I'm going to show you one more time here. So we've completed a stacked cluster, and I'm going to go right to the center of that next space between the stacked clusters. And that's what it will look like. And we're just going to work that all the way around. At the end of round 3, we will move our stitch marker and slip stitch to join in that first single crochet stitch of that round. And then once again, we are just going to slip stitch up to the center of that next stacked cluster. And now we're ready to begin again. Now we're going to be starting with round 4, and on round 4, we are going to be increasing again. And I hope you'll notice a stitch pattern here. I'm going to walk through with you so that we can make sure that we understand how to increase and how that's going to change for the rest of the yoke, because I'm not going to work every single increase round on camera because they're so similar. So we're going to start this round by single crocheting in that first space between that stacked cluster, and then mark that stitch. Now we're going to do a stacked cluster. And here's where we're going to be doing our increase again. So we're going to single crochet into the single crochet stitch from the round below. And then we're going to do a stacked cluster. And that's the increase portion of this stitch pattern repeat. And now we're going to do this next thing 3 times. So we're going to go single crochet in the next space and stacked cluster. And we'll do that 3 times. And remember, on the last round that we increased, we did it 2 times. So now we're going to do it 3 times. And now I just want to recap what we've done. We've single crocheted in the center of the stack cluster. Then we did a stack cluster and single crocheted in the single crochet stitch. And then we did a stacked cluster. And then we single crocheted into the next center of the next stacked cluster stitch and stack clustered 3 times. And that's the repeat. So I'm going to do that one more time just to walk you through it. and then we're going to talk about the repeats for the remainder of this yoke. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to go single crochet between the next stacked cluster. We're going to stack cluster, and then for our next stitch, because we are doing an increase, we are going to single crochet into that single crochet stitch and then stack cluster. And then our next steps are to do a single crochet and stack cluster 3 times. And so for round 4, this is our repeat that I just showed you again. We have an increase here. So we started the repeat with a single crochet, stack cluster, and then a single crochet and a single crochet stitch, then a stacked cluster, and then we do a single crochet in the center of the stacked cluster and stack cluster 1, and we do that 3 times. Then we're going to repeat that all the way around, and for round 4 we'll end this round with 40 stacked clusters and 40 single crochet stitches. And for round 5 we're just going to repeat round 3 where we work our stacked cluster and single crochet 1 without increasing. Now when you get to round 6 or some of the following rounds that increase, the only thing that's going to change in the stitch pattern repeat is just how many times we're doing the single crochet and the stacked cluster between those increases. So for this round, for round 4, we did our increase and then we did a single crochet and stacked cluster 3 times. On round 6, we're going to do that 4 times. And then the next time we repeat on round 8, we'll do that 5 times. So we're just increasing the amount of times we do those single crochet and stacked cluster stitches in between where we increase. Now here's the beautiful thing about this pattern is we're going to be increasing for different sizes, but you can try it on as you go to see if you like it, and then you'll know at what point to stop doing those increases. I'm going to be making this size small on camera today, and for some of the sizes we'll do the increases like we just talked about, and then there will be a round where the increases will be a little bit of a different stitch count to get it to be the exact stitch count that we want. So what I'm going to do for the size small is I'm going to work this through round 10, and at round 10 for all the sizes except for extra small will be ending around sooner, but for sizes small through 5x through round 10 we'll end up with 64 cluster stitches and 64 single crochet stitches, and then I'm going to show you what we do for size small. Now the other rounds will continue to increase beyond that and have their own set of instructions that's in the pattern. So I'm going to work this through round 10 and then come on back. Now I would said I would come back after round 10, but I'm actually here after round 11 because round 10 was one of our increasing rounds and round 11 was just worked in pattern, and that's where we need to be for this next round. So now 4 other sizes are going to keep increasing, but for the size small that I'm making on camera today, we're going to do one more increasing round, but it'll be a little bit different than the previous rounds because we don't want to add as many stitches as we have been. So the last increase that I did on round 10, we did the increase and then we had the 6 worked normally, and then we increased again. But for this round, we're actually going to do an increase. So this is for round 12. We're going to do an increase and then we're going to work that repeat for 15 stacked clusters and then repeat. So our increase will be less stacked cluster increases for round 12. Now I also want to know, no matter what size you're working on, if you have a larger bust size and you have chosen your upper bust for the measurements in terms of determining which size you should make, but you do need a bit more space in the bust, that is very easy to do with this stitch because you can simply add a couple increases on the front only to make that ease for that bust, and that will help with that. And we can also decrease those and take those out if needed when it comes to being done with the bust area. And then especially if you have a full bust, you want to make sure that before we split for the body portion of this, you have enough ease that you're comfortable with. Try it on, pin it, see if you need to add more stacked clusters or not. Now at the end of round 12, you will end up having 66 stacked clusters and 66 single crochet stitches. And then after that, we are going to work 5 rounds in pattern. However, that is where you can adjust the length of this. Notice it's going to block out a lot bigger than it is now. So this is really scrunched in, and we will be blocking this to open up those stitches a little bit. So you'll want to possibly block it at the yoke part before we split for the body part of it, because that way you'll know if you need to add more rounds, or maybe you won't want to do 5 rounds. Maybe you'll want to do 4 rounds, depending on how it's going to fit on your body to the underarms. So to test that, after you work those rounds, you're simply going to put it on your body, and you can even mark with stitches, and you can pin together where the body portion is going to be. We're going to talk about splitting for those sleeves that we're just going to leave, and then the body. You can place stitch markers and try it on and see how it fits underneath your arms once you work those rounds in the stitch pattern. We're just going to be getting the length once we're done increasing. So I'm going to go ahead and work the one more increase round, round 12, off camera, and then I will be working the rounds without increasing and even blocking this, so that we can see it opened up, and then we can also see that it's going to fit our bodies the way that we want it to make sure that it's sitting underneath our arms where we want, because this can be easily adjusted when it comes to that. You can just do less rounds or more rounds if needed. So now after working the yoke, I'm trying to get this whole thing on camera here. I kind of can if I squish it. We have this gorgeous circular fabric. It's amazing. You will notice it's quite scrunched in because we have not blocked it yet. So when we do block it, just know that will add some length to it. It's going to block more in length, and we're going to intentionally block more in length than in width, because that's what we really need to open up that stitch, and it will be absolutely stunning. If you want to block it now to get an accurate measurement of how this is going to fit around you, to see how it's going to work, do so. But I want to talk next about how to split for the sleeves that we're leaving as a ruffle sleeve and the body. So in the pattern for the size small, I have it written, this is our starting point, that we're going to work 18 stacked cluster stitches, and that would be to this point. And then we're going to skip 16 stacked clusters, and then we're going to work 18 stacked clusters, and then we're going to skip 16 stacked clusters. And what that will do when we fold it is, when we match up our stitch markers, this is how much will be the sleeves, and this is how much will be the body down here. Now this is what I want to note. This is where I want you to try this on. I cannot stress that enough. I have included the average measurements for the Craft Yarn Council in terms of how much you want to put around your body. However, this is a good time on anything like this, raglans or this style, this yoke style, to customize for yourself. So this is what I'm going to probably keep as the back portion here. The front will be down here, just to kind of keep that seam going along the back part. There is a seam there. But the back may not need as much fabric as the front, where our chest has fabric. So you can always take out, move your stitch markers over, give more to the sleeves, or move your stitch markers back on each side on this side, and then give more on the front if you need to for a chest size. And that's a great way to adjust this so that it's not exactly even. Now, I've noticed on smaller sizes, it works out just fine having equal amounts on front and back, but not so much once you get to certain sizes or bust sizes. No matter what size you are, you'll want to be conscious of that and give more to the front than the back. So simply move these over, 1 or 2 stacked clusters, move these in, 1 or 2 stacked clusters. Try it on, because maybe you don't want as much flutter in the sleeve and you want more body. It's completely up to you. The thing I love about this style is you can try it on. So I am going to be working these stitches this way. So this is the same way we have before. There's no increasing or decreasing happening here. We're simply going to work to this first stitch marker, and then we are going to be skipping stitches. I have worked the back to be the amount I want, and I just want to stress one more time. Please, please, please try this on. Use some stitch markers to pin it in place and adjust as needed. All you need to do is make sure your first stitch marker is at the beginning of the round, and you can adjust these other markers however you want. You don't even have to have an even number of stacked clusters on the back or the front. It just needs to be stacked clusters. And then you can leave as many as you want for the sleeves. I find that this one round will get you the fit that you want. You just need to take some extra care on this round. I would even suggest after you do this round, try it on again. See if there's anything you want to adjust. Do you want more stitches in the front? Do you want less in the back? Do you want more on the sleeves? Do you want more ease in the body? All of those things can take place in how you place your stitch markers. So you can do a round. If you hate it and you try it on, you're like, oh my gosh, you know what? I want to adjust this. Undo one round. It's one round to get it just the way you want so that you wear it all the time. So I have worked along the back and now I'm ready to do my first skip here. So we're going to be skipping some sleeve stitches. Now, the way that the stitch pattern works is we're doing a repeat of single crochet and then a stacked cluster. So that's what we have right here. And we're at the point that we have gotten to with the stitch marker. And now we're simply going to go to the very next stitch marker and single crochet between the stacked cluster from the round below and then stacked cluster. And then I'm going to repeat what I just did on the front side of this. So now I've worked to the third stitch marker, well, technically the fourth. So now I've worked to the fourth stitch marker of this round. And we are going to skip the remaining stitches of this round and join to the first. So I've done my last stacked cluster and then we're simply going to join. You just want to make sure that your sleeves are the same amount of stacked clusters, but the front and the back can be customized. So now I'm going to come right back here to the first stitch marker and slip stitch to join, and this finishes off this round that is splitting for the sleeves and the body. And once again, like I said, try it on. Make sure that this is what you want it to be in terms of the body and the sleeves, and then we can keep on going. So now, when we keep going, here's what's super simple about it. We're already set up here to work the body down. So we are simply going to work around all of these stacked single crochet stitches, no different than we did up here, just now less stitches because we've got those flutter sleeves done out here. And then you can work it for whatever length that you desire. You can do a shorter one, you can do a longer one, you could do a dress, you could do whatever you want to do. So just keep working the rounds for as many rounds as you want to get the length of the body. Now, as you can see, this is working out quite nicely along the bottom here. It will block a bit more length in it to open up those stitches, but you're going to keep working in the round until you get the length that you prefer. That just means going and going and going. Now, this is going to be a choose your own adventure for the bottom of this because I am having a hard time deciding what type of bottom edge I want. And I feel like in this color, I really just like leaving this raw edge. I think it's super cute. I don't necessarily want to do anything else to it. No notes. It's great. However, I love choice. I love adventures. I love the option of customizing and choosing your own adventure. So I want to show you that if you wanted to finish this off a little bit differently, you could put a ribbing on the bottom. So I'm going to show you that with this white one I've been working on. Now, in order to put a ribbing on the bottom of this, we first need to even out this stitch so that we can. So I've slip stitched to the next center of the stacked cluster, and I've done a single crochet stitch, which we can go ahead and mark to save sanity. And now we're going to be evening this out. So we're going to chain 5. And then we're going to go to the next stacked cluster and single crochet in the center and chain 5. And that's our repeat around. So we're going to single crochet around the center of the stacked cluster and then chain 5. And we'll work that all the way around, and that's what's going to give us this nice edge to work into for ribbing. Now, after going all the way around and joining and after doing those chains, we are simply going to do a single crochet stitch into every single stitch around. So that's all the chain stitches and all the single crochet stitches all the way around. Now, when it comes to this next part for the join as you go ribbing, I think it's going to be a little bit hard to see in this white yarn. So I'm actually going to clip together a video of where I worked on it on another project, but the concept will still be the same. However, the only difference will be I'm going to do not so many stitches. See, this top part of it where we started has just a few stitches, so you can choose how many stitches you want to do on the bottom ribbing. You can make it thicker or thinner. I'm going to go for a thinner ribbing, kind of like here on the top. So I'm not going to be doing quite as many stitches as the example, but those are easy to adjust by chaining more or less stitches on that very first row. And now we're going to start to work in rows. We're going to be building our ribbing in rows as a join as you go style ribbing. So I'm going to chain 7. Now, if you want your ribbing to be tighter, you can go down a hook size. I'm actually chaining 8. Sorry, I'm chaining 8. I need a turning chain. And you can also adjust the width of your ribbing along the edge of here by chaining more or less chains. So the ribbing can be completely customized. So my last chain is my turning chain, and now I'm going to single crochet into that second chain from the hook and in each stitch across. So I will have 7 stitches for this row of ribbing, and that stitch count will remain the same for every single ribbing row. And now that we've worked all the way down, we are going to slip stitch into the first and the second stitches of this round. So slip stitching into the next 2 stitches. And then we're going to turn our work and we're going to skip those 2 slip stitches. So we're not going to be working the slip stitches that we just did and working in the back loop only. So only the back loop for these rows from here on out, we are going to single crochet across. And now for row 3, we're going to chain 1 as a turning chain, and then in the back loop only, or if you want to work the very first stitch through both loops, you can. We're going to single crochet in the back loop only for each of the 7 stitches across. And then at the end of row 3, we are going to slip stitch into the next 2 stitches along that sleeve edge. And then rotate our work. So turn our work, skip the 2 slip stitches and working in the back loop only, single crochet 7. And this is going to be our repeat. This is a 2-row repeat to work all the way around the edge of this sleeve to add the ribbing on the bottom. So we'll simply turn our work, chain 1, single crochet in the back loop only across, and then when we get to the end here, we'll slip stitch 2 along the edge, turn our work, skip those 2 slip stitches and single crochet in the back loop only across. So we're just repeating those 2 rows until we work all the way around the edge of the sleeve and we get back to the beginning here where I will show you how to join your first row with your last row. So keep working those ribbing stitches for each row. You're working 1 ribbing stitch per stitch along the edge of the sleeve. We're going to do that all the way around. Now that we've worked this cuff all the way around, to join these together, there's a couple ways you can do it. You can start by chaining 1, and then you can slip stitch through the back loop only of the first, your current row, the first stitch of your current row, and the back loop only of the first row of our cuff, and you can join those together with slip stitching. Or you can fasten off and grab your yarn needle and do a little bit of hand stemming on these, which I think has become my preferred method. I think it's a little bit cleaner because we're not adding those slip stitches to it that add a little bit more density to the seam. I mean, this is super picky here. This is like mild difference in look, but of course I want to make it look its best. So I'm going to go through the back loop and then through the first stitch and seam that together. And for this first one, I'll go through a couple times to make sure that that edge stitch looks nice and clean. And then I'm going to come up from underneath. I'm going to come up from the stitch from our first row. We're going to come up from the stitch from the first row. And then I'm also going to come through the back loop only of my current row. So just going back and forth between these. Then the back loop only of my current row and down through the first stitch of my first row. We're going to keep going back and forth, working those edges together. And by doing this, you can see you really can't even tell where the seam is because we're placing the fabric as it should look, almost like a mock seam here. Now that we've worked all those stitches, we can weave in our end and fasten off, and look at that nice seam there. Can't even really tell where it's at. Now, after you've worked as many rows as you want for the length of this, you can fasten off and weave in your end. I wanted to leave this one with a raw edge. I really like the bottom of this without doing ribbing, but of course I did some ribbing on this white one to kind of finish off that look there. So you can make whatever look you want, and then you'll just weave in your ends, block it if needed. Blocking is really important on the stitch pattern of this. So I did block both of them, especially blocking out those flutter sleeves. If you want them to have a lot of drape, blocking definitely help the drape on this cotton one. And then you are ready to wear it. These are just light and airy for the spring or the summer, any time of year, as an extra layer to really make an outfit look cute. It's cute with leggings or jeans or whatever else. And especially if you're using a colorful yarn, it's very, very unique. I really enjoyed working the yarn on this one for that unique look. So be sure to hit that subscribe button and come back for some more fun projects soon. Like this video, and if you like this stitch, just remember I have more patterns in this circle leaf stitch available. Thanks so much.